Hello, my name's Betty Guadagno, and I'm going to share my story with you of my awakening journey, my near-death-like experience. My experience happened on March 23rd, 2019, which is the beginning of the season of Aries, which is the symbol of rebirth. And I experienced a drug overdose. I had been using drugs my whole life for over 20 years. And I ended up overdosing and I experienced the space of eternity. So I'll take you through what that was like. It was actually very physically, it was like very physical in my body. I have some language for it today. I've heard it described as a Kundalini awakening. And if you don't know what Kundalini energy is, that's okay. Neither did I. So Kundalini energy is described as life force energy. So we have some chakras in our system. And what happened during my experience was that all of my chakras were opened and awakened. And as my third eye and my crown chakra opened, my spirit left my body and went into the space of eternity. There was a voice that guided me through. It was a masculine voice. And then it sort of morphed into every masculine energy that I've ever encountered in my life. So my father presented himself, and he had died 11 years before. And I had a boyfriend that had passed away a few years before my experience. His voice also guided me through this space. And I was taken through the vibration of unconditional love. Not only was I taken through the vibration of unconditional love, but I was also taken through the vibration of despair, darkness, grief, fear. But my experience remained in unconditional love as I went through the entirety of my experience. So I found myself sort of in a space where I felt like I was speaking directly to source. And like I shared, this was from a drug overdose. So I was a devout militant atheist before my experience. I didn't believe in anything more. Drugs were my God. They were my higher power. And then I just thought, wow, I'm so high that I think I'm talking to God. That's what it felt like. And in this space, I had asked, the questions of the universe. I said, why does Earth exist? It really felt like I had woken up from a dream when I found myself in the space of eternity. It felt like I had just woken up and I couldn't remember any of my human life. I could only perceive that I was finally home. And it felt like this great sense of reunion. And I could perceive all of these entities around me. I didn't know who they were, but I knew who they were. Like deep within my soul, I felt like I was home with my family. And I asked so many questions. And one of them was, why did I have to go to Earth? And the answers that I received was that I'm a spiritual soldier and that I've been sent to Earth on a mission to help uplift the consciousness of the planet from a level of third dimensional thinking to fifth dimensional thinking. And my life before my experience was completely immersed in desperation and depravity. And I thought, well, there's no way that I've been sent to Earth to uplift humanity because my life is nothing but darkness and despair. And they told me that the first half of my life was like boot camp, and the second part of my life would be carrying out my mission. And I heard them, I understood what they were saying, and I was completely combative. I said, well, you know what? I think I'm done with this whole spiritual army thing. I'm just going to stay home now. And they said, no, you have to go back. The mission's not complete. You haven't balanced your life. You're here for the most exciting time to be on Earth. Earth is going through an ascension process, and you're here to be part of it. And I thought, well, there's so many other souls that are on Earth carrying out this mission. I don't need to. I'm just going to grab my PJs and a bowl of popcorn, and I'm going to watch the show from up here. And then they took me through my pre-birth planning so that I could see why all of these things had happened to me in my life. So how some people believe in an afterlife, they showed me my life before coming to Earth. And the way that I perceived it in my mind's eye was that it was like a video game. And there was a man who was guiding me through this process. He was wearing a plaid blazer and a fedora. And I found myself in a grocery store with him. And we had this empty grocery cart. And he said, okay, pick your life. And so I saw all of these, they looked like cereal boxes along the wall. And it had all of these different experiences to have on Earth. So, as a soul, I thought, well, if I'm going to Earth, I'm definitely going to Earth. And I started picking all of these boxes of adversity. I picked that I wanted to be an addict, that I would have drug addict parents, that I would experience sexual trauma as a small child, that I would be in emotionally, physically, and verbally abusive relationships throughout my life. I saw all the situations that I picked where I would be the perpetrator. I would be the abuser in people's storylines. And now I'm downloaded with this awareness. And I see that I've picked all these things. And there's some things in the cart that I haven't gotten to yet in my life, like overcoming and recovery and carrying out my mission and divine soul connections. But I hadn't experienced any of that yet. All that I had experienced was the suffering and the trauma of life. And so now I'm seeing that, I'm no longer a victim to my circumstance. Things have no longer happened to me. They happened for me because on some soul level, I had chosen it for the evolvement of myself. And it felt like 2 tons of bondage was released from my spirit in this moment of being downloaded with this belief. They showed me the moment as when I, as a soul, picked the other souls that I would have these experiences with. So they showed me just as this beautiful orb of light approaching another orb of light and deciding that this would be the person that would abuse me sexually as a small child. They showed me the situations where I picked the soul that, again, I would be the abuser with, and that we had made this contract as souls to carry out these lessons with each other for the evolvement of ourselves. And so this was a beautiful belief to be downloaded with, but I still was I rejected the idea of coming back to Earth. And it felt like I was standing in front of I haven't found better language for it, but for lack of a better term, I was standing in front of a jury. That sounds very condemning. There is no condemnation in eternity, but it felt like this table of people or beings, and they were flipping through this book and they said, you're just not finished. You have to go back. And again, I transformed into a small child. I was banging my hands and my feet on the floor. I was crying hysterically, saying, I will not go back. Please do not make me go back. You guys do not tell us what Earth is actually going to be like. I just can't take anymore. Please don't send me back. And I said, I definitely cannot go back into her. And I could perceive my body outside of myself in this experience. I was in my bathroom. And I said, she's glitched. She needs way too much healing. There's no way that I can handle that. I can't go back into her. And they said, okay, you don't have to go back into her, but you do have to go back. And so we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into. And again, it looked much like a video game. And so they showed me this little 3D avatar, this baby's body. And they showed me everything about her. They showed me her gender, her ethnicity, her adversity, her purpose, the things that she would go through in her life. And I had already gone through just very deep challenges in my life. And this baby had even deeper levels of adversity than myself. And I thought, whoa, there's no way that I can start from zero. And I said, if I have to go back, I guess I'll go back into her. And they said, that's your only choice. Okay, let's do it, And so they sent me back into my body, and I found myself back in my awareness. And I just wrote this whole thing off as drug-induced psychosis. Like I said, I had taken an overdose of drugs. And when I woke up, I thought, whoa, that was crazy. I'll never be that messed up ever again. And there were 2 messages that were very loud and clear in my experience. One was, you have to go back to Earth. And the other was, you have to stop using drugs and step onto your mission. And so after I came back from my experience, I just continued to live my life the way that I was living it. And then all of these divine synchronicities started to take place in my life to get me on to my soul's path. So like all of the drug dealers that I had been dealing with for over a decade, all simultaneously decided to change their lives and stop selling drugs. People that did not know each other. So now I had no way to get them. And so then I had no way to get drugs. And I found myself in I was the sickest that I had ever been. I was an opiate addict. And so I had a physical dependency to heroin. And I also had many mental addictions to lots of other substances as well. And I found myself on day 3 of heroin withdrawal, and I was sicker than I had ever been in my 20 plus years of using opiates. And I had a thought, and I said to myself, man, I couldn't even kill myself if I wanted to right now, because I'm so sick that I can't even get up out of this bed and figure out a way to kill myself. And right then I heard a voice, and it told me to lay back and that I could request what I wanted fixed. And I was in the throes of desperation. So I heard some random voice in my head, and I said, okay, voice, I'll listen to you. This is what I want fixed. I want to no longer be physically dependent on heroin. I didn't say that I wanted to be rid of my drug addiction, because I still definitely wanted to use other drugs. I just didn't want to have this physical dependency to this one substance. And so I laid back in my bed, and they instructed me to count down from 10. And as I counted down, I saw these 2 men appear in my mind's eye. They were these little white bald men. They were wearing lab coats, and they had these bulbous noses. And then all of a sudden, these lawnmowers manifested in front of them, and they were kind of shaking up and down from the lawnmowers being in front of them. And I watched these 2 little men go through every crevice of my mind. And as they walked through the valleys of my mind, I felt these intense hot tingles taking over my entire head. And I knew that in this moment, I must be getting healed. And so when they were finished walking through my mind, I felt this palm go onto my forehead, and it felt like somebody had written X's across my forehead as well. And then in this bright white flash, I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of heroin withdrawal. I mean, like moments before, I was so sick. I was sick all over myself. I was sweating. My bones felt like they were on fire. I was writhing in pain. And then in this instant, I was no longer sick. I could jump out of bed. I was able to walk. I was able to scream. I was able to cry. It was so divine. And I knew then that the experience that I had in my overdose was not some sort of drug-induced hallucination. It was a true experience. And my path became crystal clear after that. And I found myself on a train. I had no destination, and a man appeared across from me, and he was wearing a 12-step fellowship necklace. And I heard a voice in my head, and it said, that's your path. Follow him to a meeting. And I went to a few more meetings over the next couple of days, and I found myself in a meeting in a sea of 70 people. And I had a thought while I was there, and I thought, oh man, I don't know how to be a human. I don't have any idea what's happening to me. I don't have any idea how to be a regular person without using drugs. I don't know what to do. And I heard a voice again, and it told me to turn my head to the right, and sitting 2 seats away from me was the program director of a long-term therapeutic community, a long-term rehab here in Brooklyn where I live. So I just had a thought that I didn't know how to be a person. And then I find myself sitting 2 seats away from a woman whose life's purpose, passion, and profession is teaching women how to be women again after the use of drugs and alcohol. And so I knew that it was another divine sign, but I didn't know how to ask a stranger for help. And so I was psyching myself up for the rest of the meeting. I was like punching the air. I was like, you could do this. Come on, you're going to live a new life. And so I got myself all worked up, and the meeting ended, and I walked over to where she was, and she was gone. She left the meeting early, and I felt totally defeated. So with my head hanging, I walked myself to the bus to go home. And when I stepped onto the bus, that woman was sitting right there. She left the meeting early and was somehow on the exact same bus as me. And I ran up to her totally manic, and I said, oh my God, this is totally divine. I want to talk to you inside, but you're already gone. Now here you are. I think that you might be an angel. You're sent to earth. You're here for me. Will you help me? I think you're supposed to help me. And she looked at me so calm. And she said, "We can help you. We have a bed. Come by tomorrow." And that sentence changed my whole life without my permission. And so I went to that program the very next day with just the clothes on my back. I didn't take anything from my old life. There was nothing left to take. I hadn't paid my rent in over 2 years because drugs were just more important. I was about to lose my apartment, and I started my journey. And a big part of my spiritual integration process has been becoming a member of 12-step community, being in long-term recovery from my drug addiction and the other addictions that manifest in my life. And I went to school while I was there. I stayed there for 17 months, which is like totally psychotic. It's a very, very long time to be disconnected from the world, but I really needed space. I didn't understand what had happened to me in my spiritual experience. And again, I didn't really know how to be a person without using. So I spent a long time there integrating. I read every sacred text that I could get my hands on. I studied everything that I could about metaphysics and the law of attraction, and I began to manifest my reality. And I just started with small things at first, like, I'm going to see a blue ball today. And then they would take us out to play handball, and it was something that they had never done before. And so I had the opportunity to go to school while I was there, and I went to school to become a recovery coach. I have a job in the recovery field today, which is a wild sentence to say, and it's such a transformation. In my life before, I was immersed in sex work. And not only would I, do that for myself, but I would also manipulate other women and have them do sex work with me so that I could make money from my own addiction. And today I have this amazing opportunity to make a universal amends, and I assist women on their healing journeys today. And it's more than I ever could have thought for myself. And in the whole process of integration and figuring out how to manifest my reality and knowing that I truly am on a divine mission to uplift the consciousness of the planet, I do that just by being myself. I'm not out to teach or preach or proselytize. All I have to do is just be a shining example that transformation is not only possible, but I think it might be inevitable. Like, I didn't realize that I was a caterpillar before and I was meant to turn into this butterfly. And I often wonder if caterpillars know that one day they'll become a butterfly. And my journey into spiritual awakening and spiritual awareness has been completely divine. And now my whole world is immersed in community, spiritual community. I belong to 12-step fellowship. I study A Course in Miracles. I study the Baha'i faith, and I belong to a group for near-death experiencers and spiritual experiencers on the IONS platform. And my whole world has just become immersed in spirituality and spiritual development and holding space for other experiencers. And I think the main message of what I came back with from my experience is that there really, truly is no condemnation. When I entered the space of eternity, I was an atheist. I was a drug addict. I was a sex worker. I was homeless. I was a victim to every circumstance in my life. And since coming into awareness, everything in my life has changed. I'm a devout believer in long-term recovery. I have a career in the recovery field today. I have a wonderful home. I have a community of people that support me, that I support as well. And my life is so profoundly different. And if that can happen for me, it can literally happen for anybody. There are no words in the human language to describe to you what kind of depraved animal I was in active addiction and before this spiritual experience. But it's not the person that's sitting here today. And I'm very grateful to be able to share my story with you.